Scene script. Have you ever wondered how well our laws are keeping pace with the rapidly evolving world of cybersecurity? The universe of cybersecurity legislation had its inception in the mid-80s, a time when the internet was still in its infancy and the concept of digital crime was as elusive as a mirage in the desert. The year was 1986, and the United States Congress passed a law that would become a cornerstone in the world of cybersecurity, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, or CFAA as it's more commonly known. This was an era where the world was just beginning to grapple with the implications of a digital age. Computers were becoming more commonplace, but the internet was still a thing of the future. Yet here was a law that was forward-thinking, one that recognized the potential of this new frontier and the threats that could emerge if left unregulated. The CFAA was groundbreaking. It was the first major U.S. legislation that addressed digital crime, a law that made it a federal offense to access a computer without authorization or in a manner that exceeds authorized access. In essence, it was a law that sought to protect the integrity of computer systems, marking a significant step towards recognizing the importance of cybersecurity. The significance of this law cannot be overstated. It was the dawn of an era where the law started to catch up with technology. It served as the bedrock upon which future cybersecurity legislation was built. Laws that would later address more complex issues such as data privacy, identity theft, and cyber terrorism all had their roots in the CFAA. But as with any pioneering endeavor, the CFAA was not without its flaws. It was a product of its time, designed to address the challenges of an era that could not fully foresee the intricacies of the digital age that was to come. The CFAA laid the groundwork for future legislation, but as technology advanced, so did the need for more robust laws. The dawn of the new millennium saw a surge in cyber threats. Was our legislation ready to respond? Well, in the early 2000s, the United States government took some significant steps to address these growing threats. The USA Patriot Act, passed in the wake of the September 11th attacks, expanded the scope of previous legislation. It introduced new provisions designed to tackle the emerging threats of the digital age, including increased surveillance powers and data collection capabilities. This was a controversial move, sparking heated debates about privacy and civil liberties, but it was deemed necessary to protect national security in an increasingly interconnected world. Around the same time, the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act came into play. This was another significant piece of legislation that sought to strengthen the nation's cybersecurity defenses. It focused on boosting research and development, improving education and awareness, and fostering public-private partnerships to combat cyber threats. The act also established the National Science Foundation's role in cybersecurity research, making it a key player in the fight against cybercrime. But these laws were just the beginning. They marked a significant shift in how the government approached cybersecurity, moving from a reactive stance to a more proactive one. They recognized that in the digital age, national security wasn't just about physical borders and military might. It was also about protecting data and digital infrastructure. These laws also paved the way for future legislation. As cyber threats continued to evolve, so did the legislation, with new laws being enacted to address specific threats or vulnerabilities. This constant evolution is necessary as technology and cyber threats continue to change at a rapid pace. However, it's important to remember that legislation alone isn't enough to combat cyber threats. It needs to be complemented by technological advancements, strong cybersecurity practices, and international cooperation. After all, cyber threats don't respect national borders. They can originate from anywhere and target anyone. These laws marked a significant step forward, but as cyber threats continued to evolve, so did the debate on how best to address them. As the digital landscape continued to evolve post-2010, did our cybersecurity laws manage to keep pace? This question has been a hot topic in the realm of cybersecurity legislation for over a decade now. Let's take a journey down memory lane and examine some of the major cybersecurity laws enacted post-2010. One of the key pieces of legislation in this era is the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, or CISA for short. Passed in 2015, this law encourages the sharing of information about cyber threats between the government and the private sector. It was a response to the increasing number of high-profile cyber attacks that were wreaking havoc on businesses and government agencies alike. Just a year prior to CISA in 2014, we saw the introduction of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. This law was designed to provide organizations with a set of industry standards and best practices to manage cybersecurity risks. It was a reaction to the growing realization that cybersecurity was no longer just an IT issue, but a critical aspect of risk management for any organization. While these laws have undoubtedly played a crucial role in enhancing our cybersecurity defenses, they were enacted as reactions to specific events or threats. This reactive approach to legislation, where we wait for a problem to occur before we address it, is a common theme in the political landscape of cybersecurity legislation. Critics argue that this reactive nature leaves us always one step behind the cybercriminals. We're constantly playing catch-up, trying to patch up vulnerabilities after they've already been exploited. This approach leaves us vulnerable and often results in costly and damaging breaches. In the face of evolving cyber threats, we need to be proactive rather than reactive. We need legislation that anticipates future threats and takes steps to prevent them before they occur. We need to shift from a mindset of incident response to one of risk management and prevention. While these laws have been crucial in the fight against cybercrime, the reactive nature of legislation has often been criticized. This criticism calls for a shift in our approach to cybersecurity legislation, a shift towards a more proactive and preventive stance. Let's explore this further in the next scene. In today's fast-paced digital world, can we afford to be reactive, or should our legislation be more proactive? The cybersecurity landscape is constantly evolving, with new threats emerging almost daily. Legislation that merely reacts to these threats is like a band-aid on a bullet wound. It does little to prevent future attacks and often leaves us scrambling to catch up. That's why there's been a shift towards a more proactive approach in cybersecurity legislation. One such attempt is the proposed Cybersecurity Disclosure Act. This act would require companies to disclose whether they have a cybersecurity expert on their board, and if not, to explain why. This legislation is an example of the proactive approach because it encourages companies to think about cybersecurity before a breach occurs, not after. But this is just the beginning. We need to go beyond simply encouraging companies to take cybersecurity seriously. We need to create laws that anticipate future threats and prepare us for them. So how do we do that? We start by looking at the trends. What types of attacks are increasing? Where are the vulnerabilities? What new technologies are on the horizon that could potentially be exploited? By answering these questions, we can begin to craft legislation that is forward-thinking and preventative, rather than merely reactive. We also need to involve the right people. Cybersecurity is a complex issue that requires expertise in technology, law, and policy. By bringing together experts from these fields, we can ensure that our legislation is both technically sound and legally enforceable. Finally, we must remember that cybersecurity is an international issue. Cyber threats do not respect national borders, and neither can our legislation. We need to work with our international partners to create global standards and cooperative measures to combat cyber threats. The shift towards proactive legislation signals a new era in cybersecurity law. We are moving away from a game of catch-up and towards a more strategic, anticipatory approach. But the question remains, will it be enough to keep us safe in the digital age? As we move forward, it is essential that we continue to evaluate and adapt our approach to ensure that our legislation is as resilient as the digital infrastructure it is designed to protect. The shift towards proactive legislation signals a new era in cybersecurity law. But will it be enough to keep us safe in the digital age? From the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act in 1986 to the proposed Cybersecurity Disclosure Act, how far have we come? Indeed, the landscape of cybersecurity legislation has experienced a monumental shift over the past few decades. In the early days, we reacted to threats as they appeared, patching holes and mending fences. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, for instance, was a direct response to the increasing instances of computer-related crimes in the mid-80s. It was a necessary first step in the legal battle against cybercrime, but it was just that, a first step. As the digital landscape expanded, so did the threats. The reactive approach to cybersecurity legislation proved to be insufficient in the face of evolving and sophisticated cyber threats. This led to a shift in approach, from reactive to proactive. The proposed Cybersecurity Disclosure Act is an example of this proactive approach. Instead of merely punishing perpetrators after the fact, it aims to prevent cyber attacks by mandating companies to disclose their cybersecurity practices, encouraging transparency and accountability. But the journey doesn't end here. As we've seen, the cyber universe is constantly evolving, and with it, the threats we face. The rise of quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things pose new challenges that demand innovative legislative solutions. And let's not forget the human element. Cybersecurity isn't just about technology, it's about people too. It's about educating users, raising awareness, and fostering a culture of cybersecurity. Legislation plays a crucial role in this, shaping norms and driving behavior in the digital world. As we move forward, the evolution of cybersecurity legislation will continue to be marked by both challenges and opportunities. It's a delicate dance between ensuring security, fostering innovation, and protecting civil liberties. But it's a dance we must continue to perform with vigilance and dedication. As we continue to navigate the digital age, the evolution of cybersecurity legislation remains a vital part of our collective security.